Endeavor has had one of the best redemption stories in any anime, manga, or media I have ever seen, and I will fight you if you say otherwise. Don't get me wrong, when the series first started, I hated Endeavor with every fiber of my being, and I never thought he would amount to anything in the story, but here we are, and he is one of my favorite characters in this whole story. How did we get here? So, Endeavor started off as probably the worst father in the history of fathers. He was super abusive to his family, hit his wife, and then tortured his son and tried to live vicariously through Todoroki. Endeavor has always had a superiority complex and was always upset at the fact that he could never beat All Might and be the #1 hero. That was his goal the entire series, and he realized that he couldn't do it. So the next best thing is to live vicariously through your children. So Endeavor got to work and got into an arranged marriage with Rei Himura. So the Himura clan is a clan of ice quirk users, and they're very poor, so they sold Rei off to Endeavor for an arranged marriage so Endeavor could create the perfect child, one who will have the ability of both ice and fire, and thus be able to take All Might from his throne. And we know how that turned out, where he basically pushed his first son into becoming a supervillain mass murderer because he didn't live up to the expectations he wanted, and thus he tried with Fuyumi and Natsu, and then finally had Shoto Todoroki. Now Shoto was the exact child he wanted. He had both ice and fire quirks, and with that he could surpass All Might. The moment Shoto was born, Endeavor put Shoto through the ringer. He isolated him from his family and made sure that they never came in contact with his siblings because Shoto was the final prodigy that Endeavor was striving for his whole life, and he didn't want Shoto to interact with his siblings and get weaker or distract himself from his hero training. And Endeavor single-handedly created the most toxic family in the My Hero universe and beat his wife and tortured his children. And he continued doing that up until when All Might retired and Endeavor became #1. When Endeavor became the #1 hero is when his whole character started to change. Horikoshi didn't really explain what caused this change over Endeavor, but we can assume that when Endeavor became the #1 hero, it felt empty. He didn't earn the spot because All Might had to retire, and it probably caused a lot of reflection in Endeavor. It was at that moment that Endeavor realized the gravity of what he did to his family, that he destroyed any semblance of love or respect from his children or from his wife. And it was during his hero speech when he became #1 hero that he said, "Just watch me." He realized that no amount of words or I'm sorry's will fix any of the damage he did to his family, so he decided that he will atone with action. And his first action to correct all of his past behaviors was amazing. It was him versus the high-end Nomu, which was a direct reflection of who Endeavor used to be. This high-end Nomu only cared about strength and proving himself, and it was a direct parallel to Endeavor. And during this fight, Endeavor had a lot of time to reflect on what it meant to be a hero and what his role at #1 was supposed to be. From the outside looking in, Endeavor just thought that being #1 meant that you were the strongest. But at #1, he realized that All Might's true purpose was to make others feel safe and to be a pillar for the hero community. When Endeavor started losing and the people were panicking, Endeavor realized that being the #1 hero means way more than just being the strongest. You have to be a symbol for those around you. As Endeavor kept getting beat up and knocked down, he kept getting back up, which was a direct mirror to his internal conflict with him trying to make amends for his family. His family wanted nothing to do with him, but he had to keep getting up and keep trying to fix what he had broken. And it is the same in this fight. He had to keep getting back up to fight against the Nomu, even though he was at his limit. And during this fight, he was able to get some kind of closure because he was able to metaphorically and physically destroy his old self. The Nomu held all of the ideals that Endeavor held previously, and Endeavor realized how wrong he was and how harmful those ideals were. So he burned it up and put it to rest. And this fight marked the initial change that attracted me to Endeavor so much. Because how do you have a hero who is so flawed? He is basically a villain, but acts as a hero. And does someone like this deserve redemption in any sense? And I love how Horikoshi explores this topic of the most unredeemable character, and if they at all deserve any chance of forgiveness or redemption. And Endeavor takes his time working through all the things he has done in the past and trying to figure out what the best course of action is. And he realizes he can't just erase everything he's done, and that maybe his family won't forgive him, but it's not too late to make a change for the better. He admits that he was wrong in how he raised his family and is apologizing profusely, but is showing it more in his actions and how he conducts himself going forward. And Endeavor showcases this when he saves Natsuo from a villain. He tells him that all he wants is for them to be a happy family and have peaceful times ahead. Natsuo says that he can never forgive him and that nothing changes what he has done, and Endeavor recognizes this and tells Natsuo that, "I know that you'll never forgive me and that's okay, but I'm not looking for forgiveness, I'm looking for atonement." He is recognizing that all the things he's done can never be forgiven and that his children might hate him, but he wants to do better and move forward from the situation. And that's really all you can do. And this is tested again when Dabi reveals himself as Toya Todoroki all along, and Endeavor has a mental breakdown. He can't fight his own son and he just wants to die. But his whole family comes together to support Endeavor and says that this is a mess that you have to clean up. But we as a family never stopped you from abusing Toya, so part of this is our fault as well. So obviously, Endeavor cannot take on his own son, so he lets Shoto handle Dabi. And while Shoto is having an emotional battle with Dabi, Endeavor takes on allforone. And it's honestly this fight that makes Endeavor one of my top 5 favorite characters in this series, and honestly gives him one of the best panels I've ever seen in a manga. So while Endeavor is battling allforone gets into Endeavor's head and says, "Who do you think saved Dabi? Who do you think turned him into what he is now?" And Endeavor, of course, loses his composure and starts swinging attacks, and allforone takes advantage of this and deals a decisive blow to Endeavor. And while Endeavor's on the ground wreathing in pain, he starts thinking about Shoto and is worrying about his battle. He then also thinks about Toya and hopes that both of his sons are okay, but he realized that all of his anger is misplaced for allforone and that he brought everything that is coming to him on himself. And then probably my favorite Endeavor moment was when Jiro and Tokiyami was taking on allforone, and allforone unleashed an attack that literally was about to kill them, but out of nowhere, Endeavor finds the resolve to keep going and sacrifices his arm to protect Hawks, Jiro, and Tokiyami. In that moment, Endeavor's high school self is talking to the present day Endeavor and is saying that he is even weaker now. Position, atonement, mistakes, responsibility, all of it has only exposed that the weakness was always there from the start. And then Endeavor starts remembering why he became a hero. He thinks back to his dad who tried to save a little girl and ended up killing himself and also the little girl in the process. And Endeavor's high school self is telling him that he'll never be All Might or Deku because all he's ever done battle with is the ugliness within his heart. And he says, don't even dwell on the notion of some grand rebirth, which I think is amazing for a character like this, because when you have someone so irredeemable and damnable, you don't know what the next step is to even fix yourself. You don't even know if there's any change you can really make. But Endeavor is telling himself right now that this isn't a grand rebirth. He is going to keep cursing the internal weakness that he has always fought all along, and that this is the reason why it has kept him alive and has kept him striving as a hero. And that he'll never stop fighting the demon that is within him. And honestly, I think that is the perfect way to handle this character. He can't fix everything he has done, and he can't really change himself for all the things he has done. So this is the best course of action for his character. Endeavor never really addressed the weakness within himself, and now he is confronting it for the first time and recognizing that this is the thing that has been holding him back and that this is his greatest weakness. And in an amazing display, Endeavor is taking on allforone without an arm, and he even uses his fire to make a fist around the part of his arm that got ripped off. It is insane. He is making a new fist with fire, and he is dragging allforone across the battlefield and is just laying waste to him. And allforone gets so scared, he thinks back to All Might when he cornered him, and then he remembers that heroes are the scariest when they are cornered. And this is a great full circle moment for Endeavor, because he has been chasing All Might the entire series, and now the villain that recognizes All Might thinks Endeavor is just as dangerous. But unfortunately, Endeavor doesn't take out allforone, but he gets really damn close. But I think that's for the best, because they still gotta deal with Dabi. It turns out Dabi is not yet defeated and he has one last trick up his sleeve. He's going to blow himself up and take as many people as he can with him. Now Endeavor never made it up to Sokoto Peak when Toya originally died, so now he is doing his best to be there for Toya. He is the first one to intercept Toya on his mission to blow himself up. And Toya is so desperate for his father's attention like he was when he was a little boy that he actually awakened Rei's quirk. And Toya finally becomes the son that Endeavor always wanted. And Endeavor again realizes that it was him who pushed his son to these extremes, and he takes full responsibility for his son's actions. He recognizes that Toya has been watching him all this time, but Endeavor never returned the favor. And as Toya is nearing the end of his life, Endeavor realizes that he can't let him die alone and that he won't let anyone else get caught up in their tragedy. Endeavor is resolved to kill himself to save Toya, but out of nowhere, Rei, Fuyumi, and Natsu all show up to help. And Endeavor has always wanted his family to come back together, and at his final moments, it seems like his family is coming together to help Toya, which Endeavor always wanted to reunite the family he broke. Toya is getting some closure because everyone is finally watching him and paying attention to him, and that's all he really wanted. And then Shoto shows up to deliver the final blow and stop Dabi for good. And it's at this moment that Endeavor gets to finally apologize to Toya for not showing up at Sokoto Peak all those years ago. And Toya just starts throwing insults at Endeavor, and Endeavor's just like, go on, let me have it, keep going. And he actually apologizes to everyone. He apologizes to Rei for pushing her to her breaking point. He apologizes to Fuyumi for leaving her to pick up the pieces of the family. And then he apologizes to Natsuo for neglecting him like he did. And then for Shoto, he just apologizes and says, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. And it's a beautiful moment where Endeavor finally got the whole family together and was actually able to talk with everybody. But the story of Endeavor doesn't end here. Now we are going to jump to chapter 426, where the Todoroki family story finally ends. Now Toya is in critical condition in the hospital and could die at any moment. He can barely talk and maybe have a couple sentences a day, but the whole family is at the hospital visiting Toya and trying to talk with him. Endeavor announces to Toya and the rest of the family that he is retiring from being a pro hero due to the damages he sustained from the final battle. He starts complimenting Toya and says that his flames were the greatest flames he has ever faced, and Toya sees through it and says stop being nice after everything is said and done. Endeavor really listens to Toya and recognizes that this might seem fake, but he addresses the mistakes he made as a father, saying that you've always wanted me to watch you, but I never did. But now I am watching you, and I watched the video of you denouncing me every single day. And he makes a promise to his son that he'll come here every single day to talk with him. He says, I realize it's too late, but let's talk. And the whole family is in agreement and wants to spend Toya's final moments together as a family. Endeavor then has a final conversation with each of his children. Natsuo says that no matter what happened, nothing has changed on my end. I don't want anything to do with you. Endeavor just says right. Natsuo then proceeds to say that my girlfriend and I are getting hitched, there's no wedding, and you won't get to meet her. And Endeavor still says, I'm sorry, but I understand. Endeavor then goes on to say, I'll be making amends and apologizing for my sins for the rest of my life. And that's how his story arc ends. No grand resolution, no forgiveness, but a hellish path he must walk for the rest of his life. And I can't begin to say how much I love this ending. I didn't know how they were going to wrap up Endeavor's story arc, and I thought it'd be wrong if everyone forgave him and he was able to move on from the situation. But I also thought it'd be kind of sad if he didn't get a resolution. But this is the best thing for his character. The things he has done is so terrible and so disgusting that it can't be forgiven so easily. He has to make amends and be okay with losing some bonds forever. His son Natsuo is probably never going to speak to him again and is probably never going to come around, and Endeavor has to be okay with that. And I love how Horikoshi has a character so polarizing and so hated, but he can still find some resolution or find some way to atone for all the things he has done. And I think that's a beautiful lesson to convey to your readers, that no matter what you do in life, you can always change and strive to be better. You might not be able to get everyone to forgive you. You might not be able to save the bonds that you ruined, but you can still make a change for the better.